That time that decision to start startup was an instinct or was it database at that time also?
No, no, I'll be very honest. It was pure instinct because, see, there was no data at that time. There was no data set.
So I mean, then when the switch from instinct to data happened, at what
Hmm.
stage?
I'll tell you, this is very interesting question what you asked because the transition was very, very interesting.
And I mean, I was just reading an article in Entrepreneur also this week. They've also spoken about the same conversation which we are having, that database decision accelerate the growth of any company. As so now through Dazeinfo, are you focusing on solving for the companies which are scaling, or you're also solving the problem for companies which are already large?
No, so we are working with both kind of companies because large companies, the problem statement is totally different as compared to the growth stage company.
What is your recommendation? How a founder, which is in early stage or early scaling stage, we can take for
Mm.
example, what could he or she do to start making this data useful for the venture?
I would suggest, see, I always personally believe in early days of startup or your venture, a CEO should be an excellent, exceptional rather, exceptional CHRO. Because if the immediate next layer of you is not right, if you're not able to identify and hire or get along the right kind of people, they will also hire wrong kind of people then.
Gen AI has put an old question back on the desk of founders to rely on instinct or on data, and people are choosing one or other randomly. Today, we've got Amit with us who chose data long ago and built a company over it. Amit, welcome on this podcast. Glad to be here.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Amit, so apart from your LinkedIn bio, when someone meets you on a dinner table and asks you what do you do, how do you respond?
So being honest, it is very difficult to sum up everything in one single line because I've got my fingers almost into everything. And all thanks to, my time which I have invested in the ecosystem, been in the ecosystem for almost like 2.5 decades now. I started my journey with the startup itself, and startup was not at all a buzzword at all. So I had my first startup, I did that, then I worked with the different corporates, then worked for different region, and then I came back and currently I'm again doing lot many investments, not lot many, few investments in the startup ecosystem. Wherever I see an opportunity, wherever I see a promising team behind that startup, because I am able to, or I'm good with finding opportunities at the early stage. That is what I do, and at the same time my current startup is into data. But the underlying common layer, whether I was doing my first startup, whether am I doing second startup, whether I'm making an investments, whether I'm doing a mentoring, whether I'm advising any startup, there is a one common layer, and that is data. Because I always says that if you can read between the numbers, you can do wonders. And that is something which I follows in a very, very rigid way.
To your first startup, you mentioned, which I think you bootstrapped, right? And you sold it.
Yes,
And this was
correct.
the time when the startup was not as common word as we have it today. So
Yes.
that time, that decision to start startup was an instinct or was it database at that time also?
No, no, I'll be very honest. It was pure instinct because, see, there was no data at that time. There was no data set. I still remember I used to work on dial-up. Those were the days. I'm talking about 2001. We used to work with dial-up connections. Today, actually, we are staying, or all the other founders, they are blessed because there's so many mentors. They are surrounded with so many advisors. At that time, there was no mentor, no advisors, no funding. End of the day, it was all about dhanda. You are doing a business. That's all. No one ever care whether it's a startup, whether it is business. You are making money or not. That was the most important thing at that time. So with that kind of an instinct, I identified a problem. Yes, this is a gap, and I just thought, okay, let's fix that gap, and that's gave me an idea to start something, and luckily it got clicked.
It was not about funding, it was not about the valuation, it was purely about solving a problem.
Purely about business, Danda. That's all. Yes, let's do something different. Let's, try to be our own boss. That was the idea. Those was the sentences roaming around my mind, and that helped me to start at that time.
So, I mean, then when the switch from instinct to data happened, at what
Hmm.
stage? At
See, this came. So I'll tell you, this is very interesting question what you asked because the transition was very, very interesting. So when I started in 2001, as I said, there was no help, no mentoring, no funding, everything my own money. Even if I have to solve a problem, I reach out to my friends, and we used to sit in a corner in some restaurant. I used to develop, and obviously you had a limited kind of friendship and network at that time. There was no ecosystem, there was no advisors, as I said. So we did for 6 years. We reached to a certain level, and after certain time, we started realizing that we are not able to scale, because by then we were able to capture the whole Karnataka market. We became the largest. So this startup which I'm talking about, it was, you can say, we were the largest server providers in that at that time, and this was a kind of a AWS version what we created, because at that time, whenever anyone needs to host a website or a web application, they need to buy computers, they need to buy a server, and then to manage that server, then they only had two options. At that time, there was only two global players. They have to take a control panel for them. Either they can maintain everything from the command prompt, Linux command prompt, which was much more difficult, or they have to buy a control panel from these global companies, which used to cost, a bomb. So then we found a problem, and we created a control panel and we set it up over there. We started selling server along which was coming with the control panel. People found it very easily to manage and maintain. We started getting a lot of orders. So it was a co-location servers, it was a shared servers. So that was my first startup all about. But however, after 5 years, when we were able to capture enough of the market, then I started realizing that we were not scaling at the rate what we were expecting, because initial growth rate was very compelling, but after certain, like I think 3 or 4 years, by the end of 2005, we started seeing a stagnation. So in 2006, we had a discussion with some of my seniors and some of my other friends, and the output came out since we were not having any exposure, any experience before, that could be the reason we were not able to take it to the next level. So at the same time, we got an opportunity that one of our largest customer, when we discussed the same thing with them also, this is our current problem and how to solve this problem. He gave us a reverse offer. Why don't you, we are ready to take care of the complete business. Why don't you sell your company to us? We will take care of everything. And then he suggested us, why don't you start exploring, which will give you an experience of the corporate world. And luckily, at the same time, I got an opportunity in Africa. There was another company, and I thought, yes, since everything is in place, I'm getting an offer to sell my company. At the same time, I'm also have an offer where I can go directly to Africa to have an exposure and understanding of the global market, how to take it to the global market. And that is how I came into the corporate world. When I started working in corporate world, so my first job was in Africa, and there was a company called Tech Unified I used to work with, and they were expanding in the East Africa region. So Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Uganda, these were the countries I was taking care of, Ghana and all. I found one thing very surprising. Most of the decisions, because we were working with so many companies, we were an SI company, we were in the VoIP at that time. So we were giving a voice-enabled solutions. Those were the early days of 3G. There was no iPhone at that time. I still remember iPhone came in 2007. So Nokia phone we used to use, and then whenever you used to call, you have to dial one for this, dial two for this. It was a USSD solution, if you can understand the technology. So I found one common problem, that most of the decisions were taken by the instinct. And I was wondering, when these such large companies who are sitting on hoard of data sets, a large data set, still they are not making or rather utilizing the data set to find the right kind of insights. And mostly they are trusting on the instinct more than any BI tool. And those were the days when, again, not enough or many BI tools were available. BI tools and all those came a little later. So I worked for a few companies. I worked for LG, I worked for Polaris, then I came back to Middle East. I worked for the European region. Around few years, I worked for all those companies. I stayed outside India. And one fine day, I came to India for some reason. There was some meeting or some conference. I'm not able to recall. There was some reason here. And I came back here, and suddenly someone called me out of that. I was sitting in my office. I still remember. I saw one article. Yes, I saw one article, because whenever I used to be in India, because India was not my territory. So whenever I used to be in India for a few days, it was like lean days for us, because especially for me, because my territory was Middle East and European region. Suddenly I saw an article that India's youngest founder, and that clicked in my mind. That took me back, in my memory lane. And then immediately there was a phone number written of that person. Out of nowhere, I just dialed him and I congratulated him. I never knew him. He never heard from me after that. After a few days, suddenly I got a call. I was in India only at that time. And he said, we are doing one startup event. Why don't you come and join us? I said, okay, fine. Definitely, I would like to explore. When I went there in that event, they were talking about Twitter, they were talking about many things related to startup, all bouncing beyond my head. Because obviously, I was coming from an enterprise segment. I was doing a large scale $1 million deals. Agrico, which is world's largest temporary part supplier, I was dealing with them. So it was a totally different zone for me. And then I realized perhaps this is something which, I had an opportunity. I started my career with that, but I think somewhere on the way I lost it. And this is the right time I need to keep coming back to this. So then I started, meeting a lot many people who are very active in a startup ecosystem. Whenever I got a chance, whenever I used to travel to India, I used to go meet them, understand what's going on, how things are shaping up in India, how the whole ecosystem is shaping up in India, especially in Karnataka. And then finally in 2017, I decided to come back permanently. And then I started this Dazeinfo in 2017, because the biggest problem what I saw, as I mentioned, most of the decisions were taken by out of instinct, it was more of a guesswork rather than based upon any solid evidence or based upon solid insight. That is how we started Dazeinfo, and we started helping a lot many founders and a lot many other companies.
If we talk about today, in recent years, the companies which are starting, the startups which are getting initiated, you still see them using instinct at the early stage? And is there a natural shift to using more data? Are they scaling, or they are still in between instinct and data?
So I'll tell you, there were total 3 phases. When I started, there was no BI, nothing. Then in the middle, BI came. But right now, if you ask me today, we are not into BI era, we are into AI era. So if you say today companies are not using data set, their decisions are not led by insights, that is also incorrect. But if you say they are making good use of data set, that is also incorrect. So they are making use of data, but now how the data set needs to be used, need to be evaluated, need to be seen, need to be analyzed, it has changed completely. However, most of the startups are still into the BI era. They have not joined the AI era, and that is where the gap is.
And tell me more about this, and audience also. What is AI era and what is different from the BI era?
See, BI era is nothing like, it's like you feed the system business intelligence, you feed the system, and then to get the right kind of intelligence, you need to make few kind of settings, and you should know what trends you need to draw. System will not tell you. In AI era, you just feed the data set, and system is intelligent enough, or if you have trained it well, or if you have taken a solution which is already trained in your industry, you just have to feed the data set, and system will tell you a lot many things by its own. So 30-40% work job is already done by the AI tool today. And then on top of that, that's the reason I say when someone asks me how your company Dazeinfo is different from what a lot many AI tools are doing, I proudly say that we are not an AI company. We are HAI company, human artificial intelligence. We have bridged the gap between human intelligence and artificial intelligence, because hallucination is the biggest problem in AI today. So you cannot trust any AI tool today. We have seen number of incidents where large companies are getting fined or employees are getting fired because blindly trusting the AI. So therefore, if you are making decision purely based on AI, that could result in a huge loss for your company, or you may end up reaching the wrong side or at the wrong point totally. So therefore, it is important that whenever you are using AI, there need to be a human layer added to that, and that is what we are doing it. So we are taking a help of AI, but at the same time, we are also implementing the human layer to that. And our USP is our data lake. So we have got one of the largest. So when I started Dazeinfo in 2017, I was quickly able to understand the end of the day, this is not the competition is not about who analyzes data set in a better manner. It is about who analyzes the data set in a quicker manner. So I started creating my data lake. Today we have got more than 10 million in my data lake, where we have got an AI crawler which are keep collecting the data and keep sanitizing, doing all kind of hygiene levels, taking care of all those hygiene levels. So AI is collecting data. Then we have got an human layer which is taking care of validation, structuring, all those things, so that a clean layer side is ready. As and when we need to do any kind of analysis, as and when we need to create any kind of report, we already have the data sets, clean data set ready. We just have to plug in or pull that particular data, and we are able to respond to our clients in a shorter span of time. So that is the difference in AI era and BI era. And that is how, even today, you need to use the AI. You should not become a slave to AI, rather, make AI as an assistant of you. Unfortunately, most of the people today, they are becoming slave to AI. Whatever the AI is giving, throwing to them, they are just blindly trusting on them and they're utilizing it. And that is where we are able to see all this kind of situations and news is wrong reasons.
And Amit, Dazeinfo will provide the insights which are more contextualized for specific verticals or industries or segments. That will
Yes.
also be the
Besides
differentiator.
besides the healthcare, we are into almost everywhere sector agnostic, because over the period of time we have developed our network, we have developed our expertise. So we have lot many veteran from the industry, from a EV industry, from the fintech industry, closely associated with us. So whenever we do respective research or any kind of mandate, what we receive it, we work closely with them, and that is where our insight is more adoptable as compared to anyone.
And I mean, I was just reading an article in Entrepreneur also this week. They've also spoken about the same conversation which we are having, that database decision accelerate the growth of any company. And Amit, you felt yourself when your first venture scaled that, maybe we are missing the data, which is causing us not to scale. Then you worked in the
Correct.
large corporates, you saw they already have the data, but probably they don't know how to generate the insights from them. That was your first
Correct.
experience, right? So
Correct.
you have seen both sides. So now through Days Info, are you focusing on solving for the companies which are scaling, or you're also solving the problem for companies which are already large?
No, so we are working with both kind of companies, because large companies, the problem statement is totally different as compared to the growth stage companies. Growth stage companies wants to know more about, they are more focused on acquiring new customers. Therefore, their challenges and their mandate to us is different from the large corporates. Large corporates, on the other hand, they want to know more about their consumers, existing customers, to keep them retained. So their mandate to us is more focused on retainership, retentionship of the customer, as compared to the growth stage companies who are more focused on acquisition of new customers. So mandate from both type of companies are totally different. We do consumer sentiment analysis for the large corporates, so that they check the pulse of their existing customers, and accordingly they respond to their customers. They launch a product without naming the company. I can tell you, sometime back we got a call, we received a lead from a company, and when we met them, they said, "Ki, I want to know what kind of my existing customer, what kind of device, whenever they want to upgrade, what features they are looking in their new devices." So basically they wanted to understand the upgrade pattern of their existing customers. So that was their challenge, so that they can launch devices, they can launch features accordingly, which will keep their existing customer base glued to them. That was their challenge. However, on the other side, when we speak with growth stage companies, many times they want to do competitive analysis, because they want to, eat into the market share of their closest competitors. They want to attract their competitors' customers, or they want to attract new customers. And so the challenges mandate is totally different. But yes, the exercises, the best practices, the SOPs are all common, and we serve to both of them.
Amit, do you still see today's founder when they start in the early stage, they're still relying too much on the instinct than on the data?
I would say yes, because I'll tell you what is happening, what especially in startup, what I'm seeing it, they are not, whenever they come in, because as I said, I'm also doing investments, so I'm invited to lot many, demos day sessions. The moment I do a cross questioning, especially about the TAM, SAM, and few other things also, to evaluate how well they understand the competitors, their competition level, how well they understand the market sizing, how well they understand the market opportunity, I find them most of the time blank about it. They are aware about what their offerings are. They're aware how they are going to execute it. They are aware what kind of people they need to hire, and they are aware what how much money they need. But the moment I start asking about all those questions, they go blank. And that is where I realize they are not fully prepared about the right kind of market sentiments. Because sometimes 100 million is more than sufficient to stay competitive in the market. But at the same time, if the sector segment is changed, many times even a billion is not enough. So unless until you do not know what your competitor is doing, what your competition is. Because being as a techno sales guy, I always believe that more than your product, you should know your competitor's product. That will keep you ahead in the race. But if you do not know your market, if you do not know your customer, you're totally like a kook mandu. Because most of the time, people are like a kook mandu. Kook mandu is nothing but a frog of in a well who knows everything about the well, but nothing outside the what is happening outside the well. And he feels that this is the whole world. So most of the time, I find these startups behaving this way.
For these startups, because you have gone through that phase yourself for 6 years, right? I mean, when you were
Yes.
broadly working on what message will you give them? At what point start relying more on data than
See, today, if you're doing anything, even nowadays, data has become much more important. Specifically, research has become much more important. I'll tell you why. Before AI era, it was not a level playing field. Everyone was not standing. Everyone was not armed with the same kind of intelligence. Before, depends ki how intelligent you are. That used to decide how far will you go. But nowadays, almost everyone has got the access to the same kind of tool. Almost everyone, you pay 2,000 rupees, you get an access to Claude. You pay 2,000 rupees, you get access to Chat GPT. So you, even if you may not be an engineering grad, you have an access to Claude, you have an access to Chat GPT. You can produce a similar kind of result what an MBA grad is doing. So today, I personally feel AI, especially the data set and the research, has become much more important because nowadays, especially in AI era, in fact, just few days before I was giving a lecture in one of the conference, and I said very clearly, in AI era, execution is not premium. Thinking is premium. That will create a differentiation because to execute, almost everyone has got same access to the same tools. But which direction you want them to navigate, that is thinking. So if you ask the chat GPT which direction they need to start thinking, that is your USP. So thinking is more premium in this AI era rather than executing. Earlier, it used to be an execution. For an example, today, if you want to create a website, you can use the Claude, you can use the Chat GPT, and you can create a striking website. Earlier, you need to think what color combination, this, that. Today, that intelligence is on your fingertips. But yes, still today, you have to think something to create a differentiation and tell Claude, tell ChatGPT that I want these kind of things in my website, which will create a differentiation, which will create a USP. So thinking is more premium, especially in AI era, if you really want to stay ahead of your competitors.
in my experience also, so when I work with the founders summit, I broadly look at three aspects. One is the people, the
Mm-hmm.
talent, because that's need to scale as the founders are scaling their venture. Second is the process or automation. That's the second. So what process you're building, what systems you're building, otherwise everything comes back to the founder. And the
Correct.
third thing which I focus is the distribution. So distribution is everything from demand generation, lead generation to closure of your deals or whatsoever it is. And even what I see that first two, most of the founders know how to take care of it broadly,
Mm-hmm.
but the
Mm-hmm.
main struggle is in the distribution part. And I think which you're
Mm-hmm.
also talking about, the looking at the market, what is your TAM, what is the song. And I think that still I agree. I see the same. There's still big gap there. And there's a lot of the founders either are not coming from a background where they can appreciate the value of it, or they don't know how to get that. So I can totally relate to it, Amit.
No, no, absolutely. Because without that, it's very difficult.
So, Amit, when a founder is moving from early stage to scaling stage, so got initial product market fit, and then the growth, the funding, then I think the data, then I think the problem switch from a few data to a lot of data. Because when you're scaling maybe into different markets, different demographic, uh, more
Mm.
people, more systems, there's a flood of data which comes in.
Hmm.
And how do a founder differentiate between the noise and data which is really relevant for his or her venture?
I would suggest, or I would rather say, the problem is not like big data set or small data set. The problem is in leakage. So there's a very common terms called, sales leakage or lead leakage. Similarly, when it comes to data, there is a data leakage problem, which almost every startup faces. I'll give you a very simple example. You go and meet, let's say, suppose you go and meet 100 people in a conference, you collected all the cards. What do you do? How many startups are able to leverage on those cards, on those contacts, on those email ID, on those phone numbers, which you collected, which was written on those cards? Trust me, most of the time, founders will make a bundle and will be lying on their table for many, many months, and one day it will be thrown out. Hardly 10% out of those bundles, you would be able to call them back or follow them back. Even if you're so aggressive, you call them once, and even if they ask you to follow, you will at that time you will think, yes, I will follow him after 10 days or 15 days. But trust me, you will forget because you have got lot many other things. As a founder, you have to wear multiple caps, and also you get involved with some other processes, some other conferences. You got some new data sets. You are more focused on that. You forget the old data set. So the data leakage is the biggest problem. And if somehow you can stop the data leakage, the process of reaching to right kind of insight does not start from data analysis. It starts from data mining. So if you are good with mining of data, and when I say data, it is data plus information both. Most of the time, people generally refer to data means as an information also. But when I say data, I mean to say hard code and figures.
Yeah.
But here I'm talking about data, which includes the figures as well as the information. So that process starts from mining. And if you are bad with mining, no matter how good you are with analysis, because you will not be having a clean data set at all with you. You do not know what data needs to be thrown out, what data you need to keep it captured in your system. And if you're relying and if you're putting all kind of best practices of data analysis on wrong kind of data set, automatically you will never get the right kind of insights. So I would rather focus that a startup needs to understand that data leakage, the first problem they must solve. And second thing is data mining, hygiene, all those practices, they need to set it up. Then only they can think about analysis, large data set, a small data set. First, the basic needs to be get it corrected, which unfortunately not many startups are able to follow. Today, if you go and ask which CRM, I'll generally ask, do you use any CRM? Most of the time answers like 6 people out of 10, they answer, no, we are not using any kind of CRM. We are only using Excel. And trust me, if you're not using any CRM, you cannot, Excel can never be compared with a CRM. It cannot generate notification on its own. It cannot trigger notification, cannot trigger reminders. It cannot trigger auto emails. All lot many things which a CRM can do, you cannot do. Similarly, you need to have a right kind of tools that you need to arm with so that it will become much more easier for you. Data mining and data leakage is the first two problem people need to solve before analysis.
You know what I'm thinking? Ironically, lot many people will today think that AI can do that job of data mining, but that's not true, right?
No, 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 no. Absolutely not. As I said, the AI has got a hallucination problem. So it's very difficult. Well, I can keep on giving different examples. What happens a lot many times, even if you ask, the data must be validated, the information must be validated. AI will throw you the source also. But if you do a manual cross verification, if you go to the source, if you visit to that particular source and check whether that particular data is mentioned, it will not be. That is one problem. Then second thing is reading is also very important. Like in fact, I think last week I have put up LinkedIn post where I talk about which is the best airlines based upon the number of complaints. So I put it at a small data set where I put the total number of complaints received by airlines in June. The first one, maximum number of complaints. So the airline name, which was at the third position with the least number of complaints, everyone said this is the best airline to fly with. But the moment I clubbed that data with another data, that total number of passengers versus the complaint received, the whole list got upside down. It got changed upside down. So when you have a data set, data is very, very magical. I always say data is magical. You just cannot predict anything with even with a small set of data or a bigger set of data. It is something you need to learn how to see that.
We talk about the speed earlier, right? And I think the speed is becoming more and more critical now because, the way I look at it, scaling can only happen if it's happening with the scale. Otherwise, a competitor will take you over. So now, for a founder, right? And when I meet founders, they're already, especially till early scaling stage, systems have not been built. They try to do many things themselves, right? And they try to do what data to use, what not to use. So if you have to solve this problem in one of your venture and you work with so many startups as a VC also, as a funder also, Amit, what is your recommendation how a founder which is in early stage or early scaling stage, we can take for example, what could he or she do to start making this data useful for the venture?
I would suggest, see, I always personally believe in early days of startup or your venture, a CEO should be an excellent, exceptional rather, exceptional CHRO. Because if the immediate next layer of you is not right, if you're not able to identify and hire or get along the right kind of people, they will also hire wrong kind of people then. So in like my father always used to say कि ट्रेन वहीं पहुंचती है जहां पे इंजन जाता है. So same thing applies here. If you have got wrong kind of engine, the whole train will never reach the destination. It will go towards the wrong side itself. So it is important that immediately in the early days, you need to get along or hire the right kind of people. Now, when I say right kind of people, in that, most of the time people will find, CFO, COO, CHROs, but I suggest the very first hiring should be of CDO, Chief Data Officer. Someone, he may not have a degree, but he is like mad about data, who have got a sixth sense. Data is written there, not data. Insights is written there, but it is not, it is written there between the line, but it is not written there. So it is there between the lines, but it is just not written there. Who has got the sixth sense to read what is there, but just not written? So I would suggest that CDO is the first kind of person which anyone in early stage they should hire.
I think that's great recommendation, and I've thought about it having a. And frankly speaking, I haven't met anyone who has spoken that Chetan, we are looking for someone who can make sense out of the data for that is
Not because this is something. This is the most neglected kind of a department field. How many companies you go and, or rather, I will ask you, how many CDO have you met till date? Most of the time, you bump into the CEOs. I'm a COO. I'm a CFO. I'm a CHRO. CDO, I have not seen it. Despite the fact that we are surrounded with so much of data, now to petabytes of data we are surrounded with everywhere, whatever we are doing. And the more and more we are getting synced into a digital world, the more and more digital repositories getting created. It's just like we are leaving money on the table. And that is a common mistake most of the companies are making. And that's the reason in my team, I always tell, whether it is a content team, whether it is a research team, I tell to everyone, you all are a data guy. If you cannot read data, you cannot succeed in your section, in your department, whatsoever. I'm not saying that everyone should become an analyst, but you should be able to read at least the data, what related to your own department, what trend is heading. Suppose if you're a content writer, for an example, then you must know where the content writing industry is heading. What are the challenges? Who's scaling, who's not scaling? If he is scaling, if any particular startup is scaling in content section, what all best practices they are doing it, and how will you come to know all those things? With the help of data, the number of customers, what is the retention of the customers of him. So this is all simple data which you can just find it nowadays, thanks to lot many tools, Apollo and lot many other tools which are available nowadays. You can just create a stack of mix of 2 3 different tools, and then you can do wonders.
and I think that's probably a reason why we'll fall back on the instinct because we probably don't know how to use.
See, I will not. I'll be very honest. I don't. When it comes to India, when you say we, I believe you're talking about India. And if you see, if you say India nowadays, obviously off late we are talking about products. But until 10 years ago, we never talked about product. We have largely been led as a service industry, SI industry. We always known as offshore development centers. Infosys, Wipro, body shopping. These were the words we grew up with. So India was never a product-led country. Of late, we have been doing some of the product, but still we are still copying and pasting because there's no innovations in India. Not much of innovation has been done in India. But that's fine. If whenever someone comes to me and start comparing, India should do like this, see where the US has reached or something, I say, because see, now I have eventually become an analyst and I have so seeded into the data. Whenever even someone throws a simple sentence, my, analyst signals becomes on. So they start comparing. I immediately then, because you should always do a level playing field comparison. Every time in-class comparison is done. You never compare Maruti 800 with Mercedes Benz, right? You always do an in-class comparison. So how can you compare a country where only 450 million population is there with a country which has got 1.4 billion population? Challenges are different, per capita income is different, government is different, policies are different, everything is totally different. So our challenges are different. If someone says, no, we need to solve our challenges in a style how US is solving, no, that is the wrong way of doing it. And the answers of all those things lies in data itself. You pick up the total number of investments done in a startup in US versus India. You pick up how fast a unicorn becomes. For example, the fastest, just for your information, the fastest AI unicorn, it took only 3 months in US to become a unicorn. So I cannot say someone ki, hey, they become in US a startup become unicorn within 3 months, but see here we are taking years. No, we have got a different level of competition. We have got a different level of challenges. We have got different level of funding. We have got a different level of policies. So we should not compare with that. But yes, on its own, we have to make sure that with each passing month, our progress rate need to be improved. That is how we will reach to the right kind of place.
And this is one of my favorite topic which I follow, Amit, product versus service. So, and I'd not get more into it because otherwise we would be going in a different direction. But
Yes. Yeah.
and I guess that has to do a lot with the risk appetite we have, the
Yes.
longer gestations period we have on the product side, and it's about losing a cash today to build a value which is in tomorrow, right? With the product.
See, our strength is manpower, and you should always play by your strength, not by your weakness. Their or someone else's strength could be the money, not the population, not the manpower. So they are playing with the money. They are playing by their strength. We should play by their strength because ultimately we need to win our war. So that is how you need to strategize everything. If you do a SWOT analysis and your strength is manpower, but you're trying to play with money, obviously you are fighting a lost game.
Yeah, this is taking us to the next section, but I want to ask you one question before we do that. So, do you still get pull between using the instinct or data, or is it always data now?
No, it is going to be a mix of everything. My 70 to 80% decision, not like that ki I'm taking 100%, my decisions are 100% based upon instinct or 100% based upon data. Not like that. Whenever I take a decision, majority comes from the data insights only. But then I also apply my instinct as well. Sometimes I have seen data is not favoring my decision, but then sometimes I feel, no, yeah, this is something. See, kai sare decisions, many times you have to take a decision which data may not be supporting it, but you have to do out of as a return favor or something else, or you know something which the system doesn't know. For an example, you may be, for the founder of a startup may be very close friend of you, and he might have told you something which you know, but the system is not aware because he might told you one on one. So then that intelligence system doesn't have, unless until you will not feed into the system will not develop that kind of intelligence. The system will give you intelligence or based upon the data, whatever it has. So in such a case, you need to trust your instinct plus data. But yes, I will not say that ignore total data insights and then go only by your instinct.
And I mean, that input from someone is also a data in a
Oh, in a way, it's a data only. So end of the day, your network which works. So you have to be, active in all the ways, as I said in the beginning of our conversation. Being as a founder is like you are a chaparasi of your company and then you are a topmost boss. Both roles you have to play at the same time. So you have to wear multiple hats and you should be ready for that. So you cannot say, "Yeah, I'm a CEO, so I will only take decisions. I will only be involved in a strategy." You have to be involved in network connections. You have to be involved in operations. You have to be involved in fundraising. You have to be involved in sales. Almost every department you have got fingers.
And I think this kind of take us to the earlier discussion what we were having. So it's about getting that data from everything I hear, everything I read, reading between the lines, what Amit.
Absolutely. See, the primary data needs to be categorized in two forms: primary data, secondary data. Secondary data, you can get it from internet and all. But what about primary data? Primary data comes either you pay the money or you get through your connections. So suppose, for an example, I'm a good friend of, let's say, some of the co-working founders. So I immediately reach out to them. I'll tell them, "Yeah, I need this data set. You already have a captive audience of thousands of startups. Can you just help me?" So for him, it is just a few days job, right? So that is getting a hold of primary data is very difficult. But how I'm able to get it? Because of my connection. So connection is also kind of playing a catalyst in getting the primary data and all. So everything is interconnected. It's like end of the day, it need to reach to data.
And we'll come back to this ecosystem also, Amit, just in a minute. So let's go back to our discussion between the India versus the Western countries or the developed world, whatever you want to call it. And I remember seeing one of your posts in which you talk about that just not about following the LLM's frontier models, right? We should be thinking about what is our strength is and where does the opportunity lies for us in India market or maybe at the
Correct.
global market, but for us in India. So, what are some of one or two opportunities which you would like to share with the audience? They can leverage today.
See, one of the biggest strength, as we were having a discussion, when you say from the lens of India, it's our manpower. Just last week, I was in the panel, and then we were having a discussion, the future of AI tools. And I was very clean. In fact, I was confronted also, but I was very clean on my part that I do not see AI as a B2C product. I only see AI, the future of AI, as a B2B product only, for one simple reason. Right now, AI is highly subsidized. So when any product is highly subsidized, Tom, Dick, and Harry, everyone will, all the three will use it because it's a highly subsidized. But when the real price will start coming to the picture, when the subsidies will go away, when companies will start asking you the price, we already know how expensive the processing is, how expensive the GPUs are becoming, how expensive the hardware is becoming. Right now, the tokens are, because AI is based upon tokens, it works based upon tokens. Tokens are becoming more and more expensive. Nowadays, AWS, GCP, everyone is subsidizing all those tokens. But think about a situation when the subsidy will go away. Take the another biggest example you can relate to. It's like cloud computing. Think about 10 years ago when Amazon was giving you $50,000 credit, $1 lakh. Initially, it was all cheap. But as and when you start relying on the cloud system, eventually it becomes expensive. And then immediately start thinking about having a custom selection in your own premises. That means you're going back to the same place where you started, right? So if same thing, when I see from India, the cost of manpower eventually today, as and when the cost of the tokens will become expensive, at that time the AI will have to compete with the manpower up in India. So suppose today, for an example, if I have to pay, let's say, per user subscription of 30, 40, 50,000 rupees, there will be lot many companies. Malab, in India, the IT story is limited only with 6, 7 cities. But India is not only, India doesn't have only 6, 7 cities. So when IT, when the think about a manpower, which are still lying down in tier 2, tier 3 cities, which are available at 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 rupees, and they can do a lot many great job for you with the right kind of training, will you go and buy 50,000 rupees subscription, or will you deploy two resources for 30,000 rupees and get the same job done and still save 20,000 rupees? That is the kind of futuristic approach which we need to take. And that is how I see. You should not rely heavily and completely on AI today. India's strength is manpower. Should not lose our strength. Today, if you start advocating, okay, use the AI, get the job done, you are paralyzing your own strength, your own system. And we all know that we are not so great in AI race. For an example, US has got 3 companies. Each company's market cap / valuation is bigger than the total GDP of India. So we do not, and why? All thanks to AI. So if you really want to be practical and if you really want to make some sense in the race of AI, no matter we can say we are the third largest, fourth largest, okay, we can claim whatever we wanted, but in practical way, we are not standing anywhere in AI as of today. And that is the reason India is the only market in top 10 market where the stock market has been into the minus growth. Rest, all the market, stock market is showing a positive growth in last 1 year. So even if FIIs wants to invest money, do they have an option? No, they do not have an option. So that means eventually you are forcing them to withdraw from India. And then still, if you keep relying on AI, end of the day, what will happen? Your strength will go away because you are paralyzing your own systems. You will not get right kind of resource. They will not be able to think in a right direction. So I have been very vocal about it, being very honest.
So, Amit, for one of your funded company, if they're working on a product, and we were having discussion about the product versus service some time back, right? So,
Yes.
for a product in India from a Indian company, what one suggestion, and I know it's a very broad question, but is anything there at the top of your head, a product which you would suggest someone starting,
Mhm.
which could be built using the strength of India, which is a man?
See, it depends with an objective. If the founder's objective is to build or to give something, to make something which will contribute in the economic growth, then my answer will differ as compared to those founders who are willing to make money for themselves and taking an exit within say 6 to 7 years. So if let's say first case where they want to contribute to economy or something like that, I would say it could be education because there's a huge and huge and huge gap in that. And if you want to just make money for yourself and get out from the market, I would say healthcare. Nowadays you can see lot many preventive healthcare and this that, so many companies are already flooded in the market. And we all know that in a country which is already known, which has been labeled as a price sensitive country, these kind of products are limited to a very small fraction. Well, like, we are talking about a country where only 2% people pays income tax.
Yeah.
And these products are premium products. You go and buy one tablet, the preventive health care, whatever the ads we are seeing, people, talk a lot. But if you ask them how many of you consume every day, or do you really know the price of each tablet, then the reality strikes. Not many people are able to afford it. We are talking about a country where lot many females are not able to afford the packs, right? So there, if you talk about preventive healthcare tablets, where only 2% people pays income tax and all those things, these markets are very, in numbers, it may look good, but not sustainable. Well, not sustainable in the sense you can make money for yourself, but yeah, the contribution to the economy for a longer duration is quite unlikely.
And I was reading today itself that the funding in the healthcare has been India for now.
Yes. All thanks to the policies, which happened with me itself just few days before I met with an accident. And when I reached to a hospital, I will try to take in this opportunity talking on your channel itself. I thought I'll make a video, but now suddenly it strikes in my mind. I took it from Policy Bazaar. And you know how the Policy Bazaar ad is. The person will come, he will be right there 24/7. We called 5 times during the 4 days when I was admitted in the ICU. Not even a single time we got a revert back from them. We got a revert back only once I got discharged. So I asked them, Ki, whatever you're advertising, whatever you're promoting, your reality is totally different from them. Because at that time, my insurance company, they were not ready to do the reimbursement. It was not accepting the cashless claims. And me, I was sitting on the bed. Obviously, I was helpless. My family was struggling, negotiating this, that, lot many paperwork they were asking. So, it's very difficult. So, we are talking about a country where healthcare is really in shambles right now. In fact, there is another startup I was reading, Super Health Hospital or Super Hospital, something like that, which is a great initiative. Such kind of initiative should be there. I'm not sure how many of your audience have heard about it. There you give 1,000 rupees per person for a year. It's a subscription model. All your hospital visits, consultancies, and testings are covered within 1,000 rupees. 90 rupees a day. What more can you ask? Even today, if you go to Apollo, the consultancy fees itself is 1,200, 1,300 rupees per doctor per visit. So we need more solutions, that kind of thing. If you're taking an insurance, before giving an insurance, let the company do all the due diligence. But once you have opted the insurance, you need to have a clean and sound mind. Yes, now I'm totally secured. No if, no but. That kind of system is required in place. And because of all those gaps, healthcare is emerging as a top performer in India. Because there are so many gaps, there are so many loopholes in that. Intelligent people are making good use of that. And that's the reason the maximum amount of funding is happening in healthcare. And fintech, which was once, like until 2 years back, it was being sold like a hotcake. Last quarter was the lowest quarter, the poorest quarter, when they received the lowest amount of funding in last, I think, few years.
To
So
education and healthcare. Did I write
education,
correctly?
yeah. So education, obviously, because it's a long way to go. Obviously, they go. Uh, See, whatever I'm saying, I also want to add. Whatever I'm saying, I'm not saying anything new. Being very honest, it's just I have wrapped up in a new style. I have, I may be speaking by using different words, but these all things, whereas the all Hindi jargons are there. मतलब जंगल में मोर नाचा किसने देखा. It's all about branding and marketing. No matter how good is your product is, if you're not shouting about it, if you're not marketing about it, right? So same thing over here. So when you talk about education, it's a long journey. You should be ready. You should be mindful about that. Short term, you want to make money for yourself, healthcare. Because tomorrow, healthcare and finance both are heavily regulated bodies. Education is not that regulated. And nowadays, we know what is the condition of education in India. There is a huge gap between academias and industry. And we know the
So
reality.
yeah, so I think one education, right? And I think education is going to drastically change. It's already changing, and it will keep changing in a drastic way, especially with what's happening with the jobs, what's happening with what skills are needed, what happening with a big shift from going toward job to going towards the entrepreneurship. So uh and education, and I think, I mean, at least in India, I don't know much about the other countries, but in India, we continue to operate in the way we have been doing for last decades. And I personally see a big value here, that someone in the education should actually be looking at the data, what's happening around, right? And making inference and bringing out something which is really change the way it is delivered. It creates the employability, it creates the entrepreneurs, right? So
Correct.
from where you are uh, today, sitting today, working with the VCs, working with a lot of data, what could be one or two area, let's pick one area where education could bring a big change in the way it's being delivered. And let's talk about the senior education or maybe the undergraduate.
See, there are two things. When we talk about education, we put everything in under one bucket only, which is not the right strategy. For an example, when you say about education, education of what? Whether the person have got an education from the college, or whether he had to go through some coaching classes additionally, or whether he had to obtain additional certificates to stay employable in the industry. Today, if you try to hire a fresher, you have got very limited options who have not done any certifications, who have not done additional anything. Then my question to all this academia is what you taught in 4 years to them. If they're not employable, if they're not ready to employable coming out of the, why you're teaching something which is not needed in the industry? Or even if you're making a foundation, why you're also not teaching something? So there need to be a perfect balance. See, again, my father used to say, as I said, I keep coming back to the old idioms कि चाय में शक्कर कम हो जाए ज्यादा हो जाए दोनों ही सूरत में चाय खराब हो जाती है. So balance is the most important thing. Same thing requires in education also. When you know that industries are no more asking people about PHP, Java, and all, why are you teaching all those? You need to revise your curriculum. You need to make a perfect balance, right? Today, if you try to hire a person, every company they pick them, they send them to the training center. Why is there is a requirement that person needs to go to the training center? That itself is a big gap. And when it comes to data, you need to focus on employability or employable candidates. That percentage is very, very thin. when you talk about data, when you go to tier two, tier three cities, today I was just talking with someone day for yesterday, and he was telling me most of the teachers are those who have studied from the same college. So I asked them why, and he told me it's because they couldn't give them the job, so they show them as a placement. They gave them the job in the college, and they every time they're busy in applying in a different country. So that means the teachers are no more interested in teaching because their heart and mind is somewhere else. So if a person, suppose anyone working for you, his heart and he's physically available, mentally absent,
Yeah.
always looking for a job outside your company, do you think you will get the best out of him? No, you cannot. So how can I expect that the candidate or the student he is teaching to, they will have a best knowledge? No, they cannot be. So these, and to understand the insights and these trends, you do not need large set of data. Well, it is written on the wall. Someone just need to read it. If you dig deeper, we obviously data is, as I said, data is magical. It will tell you the core problem. It will tell you you cannot solve all the problem together. You can pick up areas which need required an immediate attention. You try to fix it. It's go step by step. All those steps would be defined by the data sets. That is where the data will become much more important to understand ki, okay, these are the cities, these are the type of colleges, or these are the level of colleges I need to focus more. Why? Because it will have a long reaching impact, far reaching impact. All those things data will help you, data set will help you. But someone need to pick up and start thinking about data sets, start thinking about the problem first. No one even thinking about the problem itself. Forget about the solution, what data can give it to you.
Amit, now, this takes us to the logical next step, which is, we see a problem, we see the data, and sometimes we don't know what to do with data. And I think that's where the ecosystem, as you were earlier explaining, reaching out to the people come into for. Uh, and you have been engaged in creating this ecosystem through your engagement with different forums and bodies. So, tell us something, tell us the audience something about some of the forums and bodies which you're engaged creating ecosystem, which could be leveraged by someone at the early to scale, to grow.
I'll tell you something important. I will not be naming any particular forums or bodies, but I will definitely talk about uh, a mindset, which is again, uh, I identified with the help of data based upon some research we did, based upon the success rate of startups. People think that the journey of a startup starts from the day they register a company. But as per us, as per the data what we analyze, your journey starts the day you think of registering a company. Like for an example, many times people think product is more important. I can and most of the time people does it. Like suppose you are from Delhi and let's say you are staying in Hyderabad. For an example, I'm just giving. Most of the time, your parents will advocate you ki if you want to register a company, better register in Delhi because you have 10 connections. Someone will help you in registering a company. But before registering a company, how many people go back and do a research? What is the ecosystem in Delhi, whether it is favoring for startups or not? What is the grants available in Delhi for my kind of startup? What is the policies in Delhi designed? Because these policies, these grants, these schemes differ from state to state. For example, if your company is registered in Karnataka, automatically you will not be getting a favoring grants from Maharashtra or UP or somewhere else. Same way, if your company is registered, let's say in UP, in Delhi, in Gujarat, you will not be getting enough of favors from Karnataka government, which is the most mature body in whole India. So I would say that you need to start relying on data from the day you start thinking of registering your startup, not from the day you are in the market or you start developing. Once the registration is done, 20-30% leverage you have already lost. If you have registered in a wrong state, no matter how good product is, initial benefits, what you can take out from just being in the right place, you have already lost it. And I have seen it n number of times. Lot many companies, they come to us. I find it very interesting. But the moment I check the ROCs, oh, you're registered in Bhopal. Oh, you're registered in UP. Oh, you're registered in Orissa. So then the whole scenario changes. Even if I want also, I cannot help them in a better way. So please do your research properly. That is my first thing. Second thing is some of the bodies I would definitely like you that Whether you are a part of an IAM or not, there is a hack to become a part of IAM. And very few people knows. IAM runs lot many cohorts. What you can do is you can just go and apply for any of the cohorts there and pick up the top IAMs. IAM Ahmedabad, IAM Bangalore, whoever is the closest to you. But find those IAMs where the ecosystem is also a mature ecosystem. Do not go and apply for an IM which is somewhere in the remote area and somewhere in a tier 3 cities where no one knows the startup at all. Select that IM, wait for the right kind of announcement whenever the cohort is announced, go and apply for that. If you are selected, great, join that, because the kind of network access you get it there, it is unparalleled. So being as a founder, this is something which you definitely keep a close eye on that. Second thing is be close to government bodies, especially those states where a specialized body or separate dedicated body is created only for startups. For an example, in Hyderabad, there's a T Hub. In Karnataka, there's a CADM. So you make sure that you're aligned with these kind of bodies. Keep meeting those officials, understand what's going on, because see, they have got enough of benefit. They can offer you enough of benefits, but out of sight is out of mind is out of sight. So you need to keep coming back to them. You need to keep going back to them. So as and when there's an opportunity for you, they will immediately tell you about that. So that is another thing which I like to suggest to all the startups. These are some of the major bodies which I can, which comes on top of my mind. One is Kedam, one is T Hub, and then obviously I Hub in Gujarat. These are some of the bodies which are primarily active. Now in Kerala, KSM is also being active, Kerala Startup Mission. So these are some of the bodies.
Thank you, Amit. I think it was a great conversation today. We covered a lot, starting from your first startup, the ecosystem, and what could be done in India. Thank you for spending your time today, Amit.
I enjoyed it thoroughly. Thanks once again for having me on the show, and thanks for giving an opportunity to speak my heart out because I have seen lot many people as you grow, your options become restricted because you cannot openly speak. You can only speak it during the initial days, and not lot many eyes are set on you. Your each and every word is not getting audited. That is the right time when you can speak. Maybe tomorrow when Dazeinfo becomes a unicorn or something, I will not be able to speak this way. So thanks for this opportunity. And I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you for watching this episode of Impossible Transition till end. Each episode of Impossible Transition podcast has a story of leadership evolution and the system they built and lived. Please let us know which system would you like us to cover in next podcast. We would love to build it. Subscribe so you never miss an episode and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep making impossible transition.